Hello everybody, it's me, and welcome back to the video. Now, in this video, I am going to be reacting to the future changes coming to Loomian Legacy by JamiyJamie. Fun fact, I already recorded this video. I forgot to record the audio of the YouTube video. So now I need to go reiterate all the points I made in 17 minutes. It really wasn't that long. It's just, I'm really sad my initial reaction to all this is kind of dead. My plan was to record the audio and then try to I could put in an audio track. Problem is, I'd have to pause the audio and it was just going to be a huge mess I didn't really want to do. So I'll just re-record it. It's fine. All my opinions still stand. I might be able to word them a bit better. But yeah, anyway, let's hop into it. And just so we're clear, I did get permission for JamiyJamie to do this, just in case anyone was wondering. Alright, now, let's get straight into this. I'll turn off the audio in the back in LL. And let's go.
Okay then, in today's video, we're going to be talking about some future features that might just come to Loomian Legacy. I want to talk about these new features.
I'm going to skip to Levitate because I already saw this part.
Anyway, getting into the video now, starting with Levitate. Levitate at this point is a very old feature that was planned to come to the game at some point. I'm just not really too sure when. But basically, Levitate is going to be what I'm calling a passive ability. So, Loomians that hover or float 100% of the time, like Dusket for example, will have their normal abilities like Harmonize or their secret abilities like Mean-Spirited, but on top of that, they will also gain this new passive ability, Levitate. And maybe it could have a little badge icon on the Loomian's info page next to the sizes to indicate that this Loomian has Levitate. This Levitate passive ability will allow Loomians that have access to it to be immune to grounded based attacks. This doesn't
actually, one thing I just thought of. You could put it like over here, like L, for example, like L, that it levitates at the badge right here instead of like over here. It makes sense to have this badge over here instead of over there.
This ability will allow Loomians that have access to it to be immune to grounded based attacks. This doesn't strictly mean that every Earth-type attack will be treated as a grounded move, but a good majority of the stronger Earth-type attacks will be grounded, like Earthquake and Landslide for example. Whereas an Earth-type move like Mud Spatter for example is just throwing mud at the opponent, which isn't limited to being on the ground, so therefore won't be grounded. And there will also be some other type of moves that will be treated as grounded moves, like Trip Root, Barbs, and Poison Barbs, just to name a few. And of course there'll be some other type of moves that have different interactions with
What about icicle traps, actually? That's a good one, because they're like icicle traps that are poking up in the air, you know? It makes sense that air types or things that levitate will get hit by icicle traps. I do wonder about that.
Passive ability, like a Loomian using the move Take Root, which implants your own roots into the ground to regain health each turn, and it will remove the Levitate passive ability, making the user grounded so you can actually hit it with grounded based attacks. Or a Loomian using the move Swat, which is a pretty weak attacking move, but if used against a Loomian that levitates, will double in power and will also swat them out of the air, making them grounded until they switch out.
Okay. I could definitely see some distribution with SWAT coming out now, because if you can SWAT something that needs like Earthquake for example, you're basically just using like Smackdown, a 90 base power Smackdown, then you're Earthquaking. Which is pretty good. That's pretty good. I'll be honest. I could definitely see this move being used, and I really do like it. I like the idea of that.
And there's another new move that isn't in the game just yet, with its beta name being called Uppercut, but basically it's a 60 base power attack that also doubles in power if used against a Loomian with the Levitate, although it won't have the grounded secondary effect that SWAT has.
Okay, so basically they're making close combat with no wrongness to it. Give that to wrestling and we just destroy everything. That'd be great.
As for which Loomians will get access to this Levitate passive ability, it actually just hasn't been fully decided as of right now. But I can imagine that every Loomian that is constantly in the air, floating, hovering, or whatever, without touching the ground ever, will mostly have access to the Levitate passive ability. And I'll mention it here as well, Fish Loomian don't float, they're just simulating swimming. Although, there might be some exceptions to the rules, but we'll have to wait and see. And the final thing to mention is because this will impact most of the stronger Earth-type moves, to not completely nerf them into oblivion to the point where it's not even worth using Earth-type moves anymore, the Air-type will no longer be immune to Earth-type attacks, they'll just resist them instead, which makes more sense for Loomian Legacy, as Air-type moves in our game doesn't necessarily mean flying, it was meant to be more of like an airbender type of thing. Next up is a passive energy regain system, which is a fairly new feature concept that has been requested for a little bit now. But basically, with how Loomian Legacy's energy system works as of right now, it heavily favors more defensive, tankier Loomians that are able to spend a turn waiting or resting to get more energy without worrying too much about being knocked out in the same turn.
Like, look at that. Centaur's rested, and that's most likely a very smart Zulong. That's like max damage Zulong. That's just ridiculous, dude. The amount of, like, that should do much more. But because of how bulky it is,
whereas
look,
a more offensive Loomian, like Zulong for example, once it's used up all of its energy and needs to spend a turn to click wait or rest, will most of the time result in it being knocked out, as it's not very defensive at all. There are some items that can help with this, like the energy orb, the chocolate bar, and the kabonga coffee, but forcing offensive Loomians to give up items that can let them deal even more damage or be useful.
You're literally only ever using energy or chocolate bar, kabonga coffee on something like Hollow Bunch, or something that needs its energy stat. You know? Like, these are so situational as items, I think. I don't know. They're very situational.
For some different way isn't really a fix for this issue, and it also helps out more defensive tanky Loomians just as much anyway. So with this passive energy regain, at the end of every turn, Loomians will recover 5% of their max energy stat back to them. The percentage might get changed a little bit, but it'll mostly be balanced around level 50 battles, as competitive battles, tournament battles, and even probably ranked battles are set to level 50, as it's just a more competitive rule.
Yeah, the energy difference is just insane. You get like a trillion moves at level 100, it's insane. So I can definitely see why they're basing it around level 50. So that's really good. And I just think it's a good idea to balance it around level 50, because, as he said, most competitive things take place on level 50.
Set rather than using level 100s that can practically ignore the energy stat most of the time. Okay then, so I can actually see this feature working in 3 different ways, but I think one of them
Okay, I actually
is far superior than the others, but I might as well mention all of them just to see what you think. The first way I could see this working is to make it so every Loomian in the battle and in the party get 5% of their energy back at the end of every turn, but I think that'll be overkill. The second way would be making it so only Loomians that are currently on the field at the end of the turn will get 5% of their energy back. So for example, if a Zulong uses Ancient Raw to pivot and switch into a teammate, because it left the field, it won't be getting the energy. The Loomian that comes in to replace it will instead, which I think would be a little too underwhelming. And the final way would be to make it so that each Loomian that entered the field during that specific turn will get 5% of their energy back at the end of that turn. So for example, if Zulong clicks Ancient Raw to pivot and switch into a teammate, because Zulong and the teammate that switched in to take Zulong's place was on the field during the same turn, will both recover 5% of their max energy at the end of that specific turn. Oh, and also with this feature, some moves like Dodge will have to have their energy cost increased to avoid Loomians with absurdly high energy stats to practically use the moves for free, or in some cases, they actually regain more energy back than they use. So yeah, that's a problem. Next up...
Okay, I think that it should go with option 1, because let's think about this. Let's say I used Flash and Flee on Nimue and they went into, let's say, like, normal ability to Clips, just as an example. I feel like, or like Luminami, for example. Let's say they go into Luminami, and my Nimue switches out, right? And then I go into something. And I feel like, and if it's late game, my entire team should be getting energy back, because they're not on the field, and the longer they're not on the field, the more energized they're going to be. If you're not fighting someone, like, think about this, like, if you're in a boxing match, the longer you get to rest, the more energy you're going to have. So when things are withdrawn from the battle and they're in your party, they're like, realistically getting energy back as the battle goes on. I really feel like option 1 is my favorite, because it might be overkill, yeah, but I like it the most, I think. I like that one the most. I like that.
let's talk about the freeze status ailment. If your
worst one in the
Loomian
game.
as of right now gets inflicted with freeze, it'll lose 1/8 of its max energy each turn. Because of the changes that I want to implement with the passive energy regain system, it would make the freeze status ailment mostly useless, as the Loomians that will be frozen will lose energy at the end of the turn because they're frozen, just to regain energy back again because of the passive energy regain system. It kind of cancels each other out. So I'm wanting to make changes to the freeze status element. I could make it so if a Loomian is frozen, they will lose 1/8 of their energy, and on top of that it also blocks the passive energy regain, but I'm not really a big fan of this idea, since the point of the passive energy regain system is to make it so Loomians can attack more, and having something that completely block it is a little too much in my opinion. So instead I'm wanting to change freeze entirely.
Okay. I understand. And I'll talk about it in a second.
I want to change it so instead of making Loomians lose energy each turn, it'll basically be a ranged version of Burn. So Loomians that are frozen will lose 1/16 of their health each turn, just like Burn, but instead of cutting a Loomian's melee attack in half, Freeze will cut a Loomian's range attack in half. With this change, it'll still be useful to use it, but at the same time, it doesn't disrupt a core mechanic of the game being energy that I'm also wanting to try and improve upon. Now...
Okay. I feel like... Okay. To me, I really like that idea, but I don't think it should work like Frostbite, because that's kind of not good in my opinion. If it did end up working like that, I feel like Freeze should keep its ability for you to cool it off. You know, like you warmed up, right? You warmed up from being frozen. And I feel like the same could apply to Burn. I don't like how if I'm using a melee attacker as my wall breaker, if I get burned, the game's over. I lost, right? And there's nothing I can do to counter that. Like, if I don't bring Wonder Herb, I can't counter that, and they could just provoke me. So, if I get my breaker frozen or burned, that sucks. Like, I can't play the game. I won't be able to, I can't Brawn Boost safe, I can't Magnify, I can't Bulk Up, I can't do anything. Right? I can't. So, I feel like Burn should have the duration that Freeze has, like where at some point it will go away. You can warm up and you can cool off. You can cool off from your Burn and you can warm up from your Freeze. And I feel like that would be a way to not make status like burning and freezing so good, because if you make Freeze just ranged burn, it's kind of dumb. In my opinion, I don't really like the idea of it doing that unless it has the same effect of it just being temporary, because pretty much every status except paralysis is temporary, because when you're paralyzed, you can't really get rid of that, you know? But when you're burned, you can heal from a burn over time. When you're frozen, you can unfreeze by, like, just warming up. I don't know. I really hope I'm not required to run Wonder Herb on every single team.
Now to get into the juicy drama features, mints and capsules, which
Yep.
I'll say are probably going to get renamed if they do get introduced into the game. But let's start with mints. I'm wanting these mints to be items that you can get in the game that you can use on your Loomians to change their personalities. My idea is that if you use a mint on a Loomian species that can lead a rally, you'll be able to change it to totem stats. And if that Loomian species can't lead a rally, like roamers for example, then they'll only be able to change to non-totem stats. Or I guess we could also just split mints into two different items, one to give totem stats and one to give normal stats. I imagine that when you use a mint on a Loomian, it'll give you a UI pop-up similar to the training point resets, where there's 3 drop-down menus, one of them being a little bit bigger than the others, that will let you select which personality traits you want. There are rules that you have to follow for the totem stats, so you won't be able to just choose all positive personality traits without having the drawback of the negative ones. The smiling totem allows Loomians to have 2 good personality traits that both give a plus 10% stat increase, but also requires you to have 1 very bad personality trait that gives you a minus 20% stat decrease. And then the Scowling Totem is basically the opposite. It allows Loomians to have one very good personality trait that gives you a plus 20% stat increase, but also requires you to have two bad personality traits that both give a minus 10% stat decrease. So if you want your Loomian, let's say Deladrix as an example, to be faster and to also hit harder, you can use the first two drop-down tables to choose Smart to give you a plus 10% increase to your range attack stat, and then the second option you can use Nimble to give you a plus 10% increase to your speed stat. But it won't let you confirm your changes until you've given yourself a very bad personality trait from the third drop-down table, which in this case we aren't using Deladrix's melee attack stat, so we can choose Very Frail, which will give us a minus 20% stat reduction in it. Or maybe instead you just want your Deladrix to hit as hard as possible and then use an item to increase your speed stat instead, in which case you want to choose a good personality trait from the third drop-down table to give yourself a very smart personality trait, to give yourself a plus 20% stat increase to your range attack stat, and then you'll want to pick two bad personality traits from the first two drop-down tables, which will choose Frail to decrease our melee attack stat by 10%, and we'll also go with Tender to also decrease our melee defense stat by 10%. Then we can hit confirm to save our changes, which will then use and consume the mint item. Whereas for Loomians that can't lead a rally, therefore won't have access to totem stats like Dusket for example, will only have two drop-down tables, where you can choose one good personality trait like Nimble to give you a plus 10% speed stat increase, and one bad personality trait like Frail to reduce your melee attack stat by 10%. And there should also be an option to let players choose pure personality traits, which is when you only want one good or one bad 10%
It's not totemizable.
personality.
Like, what if I wanted to use a mixed Protagon, for example, and I'm forced to go Nimble Frail? That's not going to be very fun, you know? So I would really rather be able to mint it to just be Nimble or Smart. If you're using mixed, you're going Nimble, but I think usually you run a Smart Protagon right now. I really want to use Smart Alvin, but right now I can't.
Traits,
but
which I guess makes sense to include a non-option in the drop-down tables, and I guess we could also give the same option for Loomians that have access to totem stats, in case for whatever reason people just want the normal personalities, not the totem ones. That's how I think they should work, but now let's talk about which Loomian should have access to which version of the mints. Like I said earlier, I think that every Loomian that can lead a rally should get totem mints, whereas Loomians that can't lead a rally, like Roamers, Pyramid, and variant Loomians, should get non-totem mints. But what about reskins? This is what has caused most of the drama about this, but my thought process is that let's use Ragoon as the example Loomian. If I can use totem mints on my normal Ragoon to make it PvP viable with Nimble, Brawny, and Very Clumsy, I think I should also be able to use totem mints on my Santa Ragoon reskin to also make it PvP viable. Because if we limit reskins to only have normal mints, then they'll remain a trophy that will just sit in your PC box and you'll do nothing with it, because it'll actually give you a disadvantage to use in PvP over the non-reskin version that have access to the totem stats. I know that some people in the trading community aren't too happy with this idea, as it will change their values, but there are also people in the trading community that seem fine with this change as well. And finally, I've saved the best for last. Let's talk about capsules. The idea is to have consumable capsule items that will change your Loomian's abilities back and forth. So there can be a normal capsule that lets you change between a Loomian's two normal abilities. Let's use Vari as an example, which the first ability is Guardian and the second ability is Apprehension. If we have a Vari with the Guardian ability, we can then use the capsule item to change it to the Apprehension ability, and then we can use a Nulla capsule to change it back to Guardian if you wanted to. And then there could be a rarer consumable capsule item, which are actually called patches in Pokemon, but it lets you change a Loomian's normal ability to its secret ability, which again, let's use Vari as an example. If we have a Vari with the Apprehension ability, we can then use this patch item to change it to its secret ability, Adorable. And then you could use a normal capsule to change it from the secret ability, Adorable, back to its first ability, which in this case for Vari would be Guardian. From what I've gathered, it seems that people in the trading community don't like this idea, because it makes their rare secret abilities like their Gamma secret abilities, or even event secret abilities like Reindeer Ikazune, feel like it was a waste of their time to hunt for. I've talked to a lot of people in the trading community about this, and it seems that they would be fine with this idea if the secret abilities caught specifically in the wild have an overload effect, like a Gleaming Sparkle, but purple instead, which obviously then would cause a problem for PvP because you don't want your opponent to know what ability you have, and having purple sparkles would give away that you have the secret ability. So I think a workaround to this would be to have the secret ability icon in the Loomian's info stat page work as a button that turns off the overworld effect. So if the particle effects is turned on, the secret ability icon will just remain as normal, but then if you click on it, it'll make the icon seem more dull and darkened to indicate that it is now being turned off, and it will stop the overworld particle effects, and you can then click on it again to turn it back on whenever you want. And that's all of the new future features that I wanted to talk about. Like I said at the start of the video, let me know what you like, dislike, and then just give me your overall opinions and feedback in the comments, because this video was to voice my ideas and to have you guys help me make the best version of them possible.
Okay. Quite a bit to unpack there. It's raining now. That's beautiful. Okay. Now, if I'm going to be honest, I like Levitate. I like Air type change. Passive energy regain, I feel like should be all party members. Freeze status, as I said before, should be able to still warm up, and burn should be able to cool off. I really like that because it doesn't require me to get burned and lose my wall breaker. You know? It's dumb. I don't like playing around statuses because, I mean, playing around statuses is fine. It's just they should only be temporary rather than always being there. And mints, are gorgeous. I love mints because then I'm able to change Alvin's personality from smart to nimble, brawny, sluggish, you know, whatever the heck. Bane of Haste, Alvin, whatever the heck I want to do, you know? I really, really like that. And the capsules and patches, if I'm understanding how the secret ability thing works, let's say for Nimue, for example, you can't rally Nimue's GSA. If I had the secret ability thing toggled, it'd have the purple particles if it was caught in the wild. But if it was rallied, I just would in general not have the particles there. So I would know if it was caught in the wild. So that, I guess, can be something toward PvPers. Like, let's say I was using like Icicle that can't be rallied, Waka Laka that can't be rallied, right? Say I was using one of those. It could work like that, I guess, where, like Akalos, for example, I would be able to toggle off the, secret ability, and suddenly they won't be able to tell if it's secret ability or not. But for traders, they're obviously going to flaunt to be like, yeah, I caught this Gamma secret ability, Rainbow Wisp, Pure Nimble Dusket. You can tell secret ability because of the purple particles. Yeah, I know, I did that. I have so much time on my hands. Anyway. I think that's all my complaints, or not complaints, I'd say my opinions on all of it. Levitate, yes. Air type change, yes. Passive energy gain, option 1, please. Freeze status, make it so then they'll disappear after a little bit. Mints, yes. Capsules and patches, yes. Makes everything so easily accessible. But anyway, that'll end off this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Bye-bye!